Hello and welcome to another episode of Webflow and Code, where I teach you the underlying code you're writing Webflow. This week we're going to delve into the world of Framer and specifically code components and explore the world of code inside of Framer, because quite frankly the documentation that Framer provide sucks. Just to get a few things off my chest, the example they have on their own documentation doesn't even have any accompanying video or imagery to kind of guide you through this example. We can do this with the standard React style. Now let's make the title prop that's configurable in the interface. We'll explain more about controls later. And there you'll have a simple configurable React component. Like, what? And it doesn't even show you any code examples of how to actually use any of these. Even clicking on some of these will just close it and take me to the top of the page. Framer, sort it out. And furthermore, the web is littered with links to their documentation. And if you go to framer.com/API, you get taken through to this documentation, the Framer for developers. If you go to framer.com/API/, you go through to Framer motion documentation, which can provide some insight, but it's really it's a mess. Sort it out, Framer. So this first episode will be about creating basic components and really just getting familiar with React. I'm not going to go too deep in React outside of this episode because it might as well be a React tutorial then, and there's plenty of those on the internet, and it kind of sits outside of Framer specifically. So what we're then going to go into is what is specific to Framer inside of their React components. So without further ado, let's dive in. Let's get a component spun up and ready to begin playing with. Before we kick off, I just wanted to let you know something that I was mistaken by, in that I thought that you could sort of create a component inside of Framer, design it however you want, and then look at the code that makes up the component. That's not the case at all. You create a component from code from scratch, and you have no styling applied to it, you have no nothing. The good thing is you can provide interface items, and we'll get into that later in the series. You can provide interface items to manipulate the code, more specifically manipulate the values inside of the code. So there's some flexibility in the designer there, and then you're basically left to write your own CSS then. So I've not really found a nice way to do this, really. If you know of a better way, do let me know. But to create a code component, I just click on my frame, my page, whatever, and then create a new file here. And this is where I'm going to create, let's say we're just going to create, let's do something a bit different. Let's do a card component, right? You just name it, and we're going to create a new component. Overrides are different. Again, we'll go into that at another point. But here we have kind of our default JavaScript, or TypeScript more specifically, file that gives us an idea of what we're doing here. Now, let's explain some of this stuff and then overwrite it and start to create, and I'll build it up together basically. So with React and many JavaScript kind of based frameworks is that you can import code from other files. You can see here, if we were to go to this file or this URL, it's just some basic code. Now you can host your own code on GitHub or somewhere else that creates a component. You might already have a component library that exists somewhere, and you can then import it into your Framer component, which is pretty cool. In this instance, actually, let's reopen that. And in this instance, let's just kind of look through it. It looks like it's a component that takes a bunch of props, set active, use hover. Looks to me, using my professional eye, is that see, yeah, so it's just this box basically. It's all the code necessary to create this box, and that's why you can only see this example thing here, which coincides with that. Sorry if this sounds too basic, but I just want to make no assumptions on kind of what people do and don't know about JavaScript and React and various things like that. So just know that we're importing everything, all this hover effects and everything like that, into this component, and we're rendering it out here. This is why you're not seeing any code associated with this hover effect at all. You can see the style here, but again, we'll get into that. So if I was to remove this, for instance, then you can see that it's complaining that that doesn't exist. And then this should all just kind of disappear. If I save that, it will all disappear. So that's the import. Next, this is something you will have with every single React component. It will be a default function that returns what they call JSX, but you can think of it as like HTML. And they've named this function or component card component, and that coincides with that. So that's something Framer is doing already for us. But if we were to remove that, we could name this probably whatever we want. I don't know, but whatever. Just leave that as it is. And you can see they're returning, and then this is the HTML. And then we have a style property here that contains container style, which links through to this object here. And this you might recognize as CSS properties, because yes, if you create code components inside of Framer, it's going to be necessary for you to understand HTML and CSS. Unfortunately, you're completely outside of the comfort of dragging and dropping and clicking. So once again, if I remove this, it's going to complain and save that. It's probably you've got some code errors here, and you can kind of pick apart. Now, some of these code errors are going to look very scary and very confusing. A lot of people, including me in the early days, I would just kind of freeze up and not know where to look. And then you'd get a senior developer come over and just literally read out the error. So reference error, container style is not defined. It says it right there. So do start by just reading it. You'll begin to, they do use quite verbose language, such as defined, and things like this. But you start to get to know the language that code and programs kind of use. So of course that doesn't exist, and we can then remove that and save that, and everything should be fine. Props is a way to pass in values to another component. So if I had a card component, and I could, in theory, copy and paste this card component, use it over and over and over again, but maybe I want the title to change. Maybe I want an image to be different. That gets passed into something called props or properties. Doesn't really matter what you call this. You could call it poo for all I care, but props is kind of, again, one of those established conventions that we use. So let's just demonstrate that for a second. If I go props, this is going to be an object of values, so we're going to have to specify something in that object. If we just do that, probably not going to get anything from there. So again, if you know a better way to do this, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to go cards component rather than cards. Go component, component. Here we go. And so we can remove all this because we know what this does now. And what we're going to do, we're going to import card component from, I think it's this. Now I don't even know this at this point, but I feel like I've seen this component. And then let's do, remove that just in case that's breaking it. Let's have a look. Components. Okay. Copy import. Okay. That makes no sense. So if what did we do now? Code component, we said props.title. So title equals hello. And you can see that it's rendered, but this is a single instance of a card component. We could then copy, paste, wombat, boom. And then however I design these card components, again, don't get too worried about this at the moment. So card style, we'll go over it in just now. We can go background, red, color white, padding 1 EM. Let's do that. Style, card style. And then we go to our cards component, save that. There's this now. Okay. Copy, import. Okay, so that looks like it's updated. And there we go. So it looks like every time you change a nested component, you have to then recopy the import. Anyway, we're getting way too carried away here. We're getting way too advanced. So let's talk about JSX quickly. Now, you can write inline HTML if you know HTML. This could be a heading, H1, hello. It could be any sort of HTML element that you can hope and dream of. Block quote, you can put in here. It's just HTML. Self-closing HTML elements are a thing. So for example, now I want to break this out into multiple lines, so you can do that with the brackets here. If we have a div here and a bit of text that says hello, you might be familiar with it with the image component, that you could just do this and set a source and set that as a image source. We've got our wombat here. You're familiar with the self-closing tags here. That's what you saw when we had our card component in here. We didn't have any content within the component, so we can just close it and React will take care of on the front end. What you'd see is, let's have a little look at card component. Yeah, so you'd see two divs. You'd just see opening and closing div with everything inside it. React takes care of all of this stuff. So that's self-closing components, and you can write JavaScript within these as well. So and you do that with the brackets. So if I go console.log hello, then what you would see is, there's an error there. You'd see my hello there. So to add style, again, you're going to want to be familiar with CSS. And the cleanest way to do it is, you could write it inline by stating a style tag. And again, you'll be familiar with this if you know about inline styles in CSS. You could go background color red. You could do it directly there. And color white. But you could probably see how untidy that might get when you've got lots of styles added to lots of things. So what we're going to want to do is copy or cut, I'm going to cut it, is that object. Create a constant, which is a variable. Name this card styling or style, whatever you want. You can be called whatever you want, and just paste that code. And that is an object then. And then we can take that reference to that object and paste it in there. And there you go. You've started to create styles. This is also space for you to put functions. So let's create a function. You could go const, get time. Just create a function called get time equals, you can create functions like this. You can create functions like this, or you can create functions like this, get time. And all this is going to do is return new, is it new? I haven't done this in a while. New date, get time. We're just going to return that and use that function. And because we want to write JavaScript, you put it in curly brackets. And clean that up a bit. We're just going to call that function get time. We call it with the brackets there. And if we copy that, you'll see that there's some crazy number, and that's crazy code thing. We can do a bunch of other stuff, but that is the current time in milliseconds since the 1st of January or the 30th of January 1970. That's how many milliseconds has passed, or seconds has passed. I don't know, whatever. But the point is, this is a space for us to write functions, store variables, track variables. One of the biggest things you'll come across inside of React is something called state. And this is a way to track variables that change, that you want then reflected. And this is the core of a reactive application, probably where they got the name React, to be honest, but no idea. But we want to store, say we want to store the number of times someone's clicked something. That's an age-old example to demonstrate React. So let's just do that. So we want to create a variable here. This is going to look weird now, but we're going to put an array and put two things. We want to do set click. Again, this is a convention, comma, click. And we go use state. Probably need to import that from React. Import use state from React. I think that's, yeah, cool. So just to break this down a little bit, we're giving ourselves this is all, most of the magic here is handled by use state. Let's be clear, this looks bonkers and a lot of it is taken care of by use state, but we're giving ourselves access to a function that sets the click, like we called it set click. Again, this could be set monkey, whatever, but it makes sense to put set click because we're going to track the number of clicks, set click, and then we actually get the value itself. So let's do something real quick. Let's go const click handler, which will be a function, and we're going to make this into a button, and on click we're going to go click handler. Okay, and then if we console log inside of here, hello, so we have a click handler that should hello, 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 hello. Right, here we're going to want to, every time we click, we want to set click, and then we're going to set that to click plus 1. Might be what we're whinging about here. So it's saying it's undefined. So we can set this as a default thing using inside of this function. By default, this is 0. Still whinging about it. Okay, I just had them the wrong way around. Ugh. Okay. So we set it as 0 as a default, and every time we call this click handler, we set this to click plus 1. So that should turn to 1. And then when you click it, it will be 2. Let's do something here. Okay, so this is another concept, empty elements. So you need something wrapping all of your elements in JSX. In this instance, the button is the wrapping element. If we go to put a div here, it will whinge at us. So we need to wrap that in something, and there's this thing called this empty element. So we wrap that, and now everything is wrapped in that empty element. Here, we're just going to export the clicks. Boom, 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 boom. So that is state, and that will be something that you'll come into contact with. I want to talk about useEffect. useEffect gets called every time something mounts. So useEffect, and this is a function that we pass another function. Here's the function that we're replacing inside of the useEffect function, which we need to import. And you'll see that console log mounted. Okay, if we console log that, then we get that mounted console log there. You can also give it an array to call when a value changes. So let's track when click changes. So whenever click changes, we should see console log mounted. So there we go. Because it's calling every time click changes. I think as you use React and you use a component, this will start to make sense. I guess what I'm trying to do here is just plant seeds in your mind of stuff you're likely to encounter so you understand them. Don't worry about it too much right now. If you see it, refer back to this video, check out what I said about it. I'll leave timestamps down below to the individual sections. you can just quickly remind yourself what it does, and then that will provide the context. Quickly cover something we skipped over is default props. So you saw that if we were to go props.title here, then if nothing is passed, then we won't see anything. Of course, if something is passed and we go into our cards component, sorry, all these. So here we go. Hello, you silly wombat. It's already kind of working here because we're passing in a title. Let's just do that. It says click. It doesn't have anything. So if we go back into our component here, we can set card component default props, and then we can say title is equal to me. And then when nothing is passed, you'll see that me there. Now it's just a simple case of dragging card component, dragging these anywhere that you want them. And you have your component here. Now if I was to make that a layout, stack it, it will align to the middle there. And there you go. You've now built your very first ugly looking card component. So I think that will wrap it up, the basics of React, creating components and working with React. Let me know if you want to continue this series because a lot of work goes into it and I don't want to do it if there's not enough demand. What my plan is for the next episode is to look into things like auto layout. There's custom properties which enable you to change things from the designer and manipulate stuff that's happening inside of the component. Again, let me know if you're interested in this or if I'm missing something with regards to the documentation, because quite frankly, like I say, it's awful. So that's why I'm producing this series. Give me a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe if you want to hear this series. You'll hit the bell, of course, if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out. And until next time, happy no coding.